Hey, peace to the family. Uhuru, Amani Nanguvu. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. I'm Kimba Ajore, host of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. And my comrade in arms, Frank, is going to be joining us shortly, and Natasha's supposed to be joining us today too. So we'll see what happens. But until Frank joins, just want to give an update on what we've been doing. You know, we charge colonialism. Yesterday, we hosted in Philadelphia a discussion, a teaching discussion that went really well around W.B. Du Bois and Dr. Amerson Wilson. February 23rd is the born day of both of those great leaders, great thinkers, Pan-African thinkers, theorists, and it was a beautiful discussion, man. I think a lot was taken from it. The theme of the discussion was Black nationalism, something that Dr. Amerson Wilson and Du Bois spoke about in their writings, and we discussed the type of mindset that we really need to develop to be able to uplift our people and sort of strengthen our communities and strengthen our nation. So it was really powerful discussion. I hope to do more of those. And early in the week, as a matter of fact, the day before, I had a discussion on the Blueprint for Black Power as we were examining chapter 5 of that text. And so I'm going to continue to dive into that text, and I hope many of you will join that study, the Blueprint for Black Power study, as we go through that entire text. So the next discussion is going to be around chapter 6. So looking forward to building with you all around that. So, for those who are joining us for the first time, make sure you subscribe to our channel, get those notifications. So when we do go live, you are aware, you get notified that we're going on. We have discussions. We have a political prisoner segment that you can tap into. We have the Dr. Amerson Wilson segment where we discuss the Blueprint for Black Power, as well as Black on Black violence, another text of his. So you could tap into that. Frank, every Sunday, like church, Frank, has a discussion podcast where he gives powerful analysis of what's going on around the world as it pertains to African people, pointing out a lot of the contradictions. So that's every Sunday. And of course, we do this podcast on Saturdays at 10 a.m. So, it's a lot of information we giving out. Oh, and tomorrow, you definitely got to tap in tomorrow at 10. I'm actually going to share that flyer. I'm going to share that flyer a little later in this podcast. But it's going to be a powerful discussion. Tovio, who has been on this channel a few times. He's part of the We Charge Colonialism family. Is going to I'm just trying to pull up that flyer now. Is my brother Conrad in arms? Brother Frank was in the house yesterday. But tomorrow, Future Horizons Beyond Elections. It's a webinar. The speaker is going to be Andale Ngan. Oh, man, that's a heck of a last name. Brother Andale. I got to get my African tongue back, man. I see African words sometimes. I'll be like, I got this colonizer tongue, man. So that's going to be 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I'll get some more information on that later in the podcast. Frank, you want to introduce yourself? Welcome, my brother.
Yeah. My name is Frank Malba, as always. So, host for the Revolutionary Patriotic Educational Lecture Series every Sunday at 1 p.m. And see you all tomorrow.
Right on. So today's topic is Malcolm X. February the 21st was the day that Malcolm was assassinated by the hands of this government and hands of uh, people who were members of the Nation of Islam. Uh, Whether they was FBI informants or not, that's another conversation. But they were members of the NOI. The concerted effort, collective effort of Black folks, we do know it was Black folks. I can say that much. And this government, Malcolm X was assassinated on February 21st, and so we need to continuously uplift his name and expose like what really happened. And so uh, my story is kind of diving into uh, sort of the whistle being blown, or the exposing of the government's involvement in the Malcolm X assassination. And then later we're going to dive into a new book. It's selected speeches and statements of Malcolm X. And so we'll be looking at some of his letters, some of his statements and speeches for over the next few weeks as we near his birthday. And this year I've joined the Malcolm X committee in Philadelphia, and we're going to be hosting the annual Malcolm X Day event on May 19th. So if you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area, try to make your way to the area and be a part of that on May 19th. Claim Malcolm X Day, and I'll talk more about that later. So we'll be diving into message to the grassroots, and is that message still relevant today? I think that's a question we should ask, and if we're having a discussion on it, there is some relevancy to it, right? But most people don't know this speech, and if we were to have a discussion with them, would they think it was relevant, and how can we convey the relevancy of this speech? I think to those people, right? Because that's a problem that we have most of the time when we come across people in our community, and we have these discussions. They don't see the relevancy. It doesn't resonate with them. So if it is relevant, how do we get it across to community members, people who are part of our nation, to understand the relevancy? So Uhuru Conrad Sayero, welcome. So let me pull up this first story, and then we'll start off with the weekly roundup, and then we'll get into the Malcolm X speech. Welcome. Make sure you like and share. And if this is your first time here, subscribe.
Natasha,
So
Natasha Nkrumah. Nkrumah, I'm calling you Nkrumah. I'm always calling you Nkrumah.
I got the spirit.
I'm always calling you Nkrumah, man.
I got the spirit, bro.
All right. I think Natasha is on. So check the chat link.
Oh, she need the link?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me do that. You wanna go into your story? And
Yes. Let me go into my story while you're doing that.
All right.
So I'm gonna be calling you Nkrumah instead of. All right. So okay. So for the story we have how they call it ECWA. And I'm gonna be diving into that more and more tomorrow. Okay. So let me share my screen. We have ECWA trying to beg Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, the three nations that have disengaged themselves from the so-called neo-colonialist control ECWA. So Tinubu, who shared the leadership of that committee or of that entity, alongside with Nana Akufo-Addo, who also have a huge voice within that entity of ECWA. And then the sad part about it is that one of the last founding member of ECWA, who is still alive, but he's currently in Nigeria, they are also begging or asking the three Shahid nation to come back to ECOWAS, and part of the negotiation of that is to the possibility of removing the sanction. All right, so let's see into the article what they are saying, but I'm going to be speaking about that more tomorrow. But for the sake of this platform and to give other space, we will not really go into detail. But tomorrow, trust me, we're going to go into detail. So let me just read a little bit. It says ECOWAS may lift sanction on Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Um, these These are strong indication that the Economic Community of West African State, ECOWAS, will lift sanctions imposed on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger following their meeting. So there are strong indication. So let me just read. Okay, so multiple sources told Data Trust on Thursday that the move was meant to disuse the three committee from actualizing their dream of pulling out of the regional bloc. The record that minister minister from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger Republic had on Thursday, February 15, declared plan to establish federation. The three countries has in January this year around they are withdrawn from ECOWAS, a bloc which President Bola Tinubu lead. They were asked to have a rethink, citing various reasons, including hardship to be faced by their people. But we're going to dive into that a little bit tomorrow. But sources says beside the claim that ECOWAS decision being taken by the Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso government, like I said, I'm not going to call them jointer. They are not jointer. They are freedom fighter. Okay, government are also causing embarrassment for the regional body and most especially Nigeria, which president oversaw. Over the regional bloc. There is something that I saw here. On Wednesday, former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, called on ECOWAS to lift sanctions imposed on the three nations, while noting that Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger were important member states. He equally called on them to also withdraw their sanction to leave ECOWAS. Gowon, the surviving founding leader of ECOWAS, made a call in an open letter to the regional bloc, which he presented to Dr. Oman Alio Touare, president of ECOWAS Commission, on Wednesday in Abuja. He also visited President Tinubu at the presidential villa. I call on West African leaders to immediately consider the implication of the following lifting of all sanctions that have been imposed on Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Niger, withdrawn from Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger of their notice to leave ECOWAS. Okay, so I will just take that from there. Like I said, tomorrow I will discuss this more. So that is what we have right now, or that is what right now going on in the economic community, they call it block of the action those three nations have taken. But what I want to address here is they are saying they want to bring back these three nations because they don't want for hardship to face the citizens of the people of these three nations. But the question here is, those nations have already been facing hardship and they have already recognized the solution to their problem. And the solution to their problem have been to withdraw from the ECOWAS, the neo-colonialist organization, and then form an alliances with all three, nations. And that is what they are doing. And if you have looked at from the town of their decision, or from the time of how they call it, these government operating as an entity in our region, they have improved a bit because they are no longer being dictated to. They have full control of their resources, of their nation, of their land. So they are seeing some kind of a freedom. And now the issue here is the tension is now coming on the, how they call it, Niger, not Niger, but Nigeria, Mali, or Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, okay, the West African nation. The tension is now coming on them because these three nations, like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they have shown to the West African citizens, or that, look, the only way to freedom, this is how we need to go. And the reality here is, because of those three nations leaving, if those three nations actually survive, that's how other nations in West Africa are going to leave the West African bloc, or the West African, how do you call it, economic organization that is being funded, right? So what happened here is there's a pressure on tension on the organization actually dissolving, because the reality here is Africans are no longer seeing any value interest in the ECWA. I mean, African citizens, both home and abroad. They are no longer seeing anything valuable or tangible within the economic community of West African state. So those nations, or those leaders that are sharing that committee, they are saying that even with their prospective nations, the citizens in those nations are no longer respecting that ECWA, and the fact that they are no longer respecting that ECWA, the disrespect also go on to those leaders who are supporting ECWA, and they are saying that it's going to have a ramification and negative effect to that even the AU nations or citizens are no longer going to support or respect AU, and they will not be taking their solution to AU. So due to that, the economic community of West African states have seen that if these three nations actually form an alliance and they succeed, that's how citizens in the rest of the African nations, like even Nigeria, citizens going to rebel. Citizens going to react that, you know what, if Mali did it, if Niger did it, we have to do the same thing. And that's how citizens going to react against their government, against any foreign entity, because Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they are reacting against foreign entity in their nation, taking our resources. And that's how, all right, African are going to react against neo-colonialist organization within that nation. So it's going to have a huge effect. So that's the reason they are actually asking or begging these nations to come by with the intent of lifting the sanction. But the reality here is your sanction plus your monetary sanction is doing nothing to the people. The people are moving on. In fact, they love it because through that is they will find solution, and it will enable them to be strong enough to take matter into their own hands to provide and to produce what will benefit them. So my advice to those nations, do not come back to the ECWA. Do not come back to the ECWA. It is a trap. As long the funding are coming from Europe and America, it is a trap. It's still a neo-colonialist entity. The only reason they are calling you is not because they feel for the Nigerian or the Burkinabes or the Malian. It's not because of that. If it was because of that, they wouldn't have put sanction on you. They would have come to you to sit on the table to create a dialogue to understand the reason why you are taking the stand you have taken. But they did not do it. It is not about feeding for you. It is about protecting their interests and the interests of Europe and America, because they are saying that citizens have seen that the influence of America and Europe into those entities, it is bad. And even America now is trying to protect her influence in Africa. Okay, and we're going to discuss that tomorrow. So let me just leave you guys to come in. But that is my advice to those nations. Do not come back.
Yo, y'all been forewarned. So nah, appreciate that. Appreciate that. Yes, don't come back. I think and that was like a question that I asked. Um, I guess it's kind of rhetorical, but what's the change in stance with ECOWAS as it towards Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger, why this shift, right? All of a sudden. But there's definitely, I think this exposes contradictions those contradictions that have been exposed, but becomes even deeper, becomes even, more apparent. The problem with ECOWAS as we see them sort of isolate on their position with these three countries. The other thing you had brought up with in regards to the reaction from the people, again, like governor, I know a lot of people may have issues with coup d'etats, right? And which is, sort of, you know, uh, you'll see sort of a revolution, even though it doesn't always end with revolution, right, or revolutionary politics, because then you come into a situation where sometimes it's just people who want to grab the reins of control and power, but continue the relationship with the masses of people. So they don't necessarily want to revolutionize the political economy; they just want to have control over it. But this action to remove those people who are in power, it speaks to the contradiction that exists within that society and people, because even if those people who are leading the revolution are leading this change in regime, may not have the best intentions, if the people are supporting them, then the people have an issue with the current regime, right? They don't know what's to come, but it just shows a serious contradiction. And so, with that being said, I think like, we should not, like straight go away from or shun uh, these coup d'etats, but just embrace it as there needs to be a regime change. There's something fundamentally wrong with the current government that's in power, that masses of people want to see a shift in control and a shift in a shift in power or a shift in government. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing this, Natasha. I don't. Well, did you want to?
I'm babysitting. Give me a second.
Oh, you got it. You got it. Let me shift into this piece to the family piece to everybody that has tapped in. I'm gonna go to the next story, Malcolm X. Let's do that next time. So two men alleged police FBI conspiracy, 1965 assassination of Malcolm X. So we're gonna look into that. I still, believe that the right people haven't been brought to justice for the assassination of Malcolm X, man. And I think it really exposes, uh, who was really the mastermind behind the assassination of Malcolm X, because the government knows who did it. They locked up the wrong people, right? So the only reason that they would do something like that is if they were in cahoots with the true assassins of Malcolm X. That's the only conclusion that I can come to. And this article said there are new questions about who is responsible for the assassination of Malcolm X, as two men come forward and point the finger at law enforcement. Wednesday marked 59 years since the civil rights icon was shot to death as he prepared to speak in the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights. It happened in front of some 400 people, including 9 police informants. It took place 1 week after Malcolm X's home in Queens had been firebombed, so it was clear he was the target. Man, that's it. I'm just like, the way that he was 400, probably 400 plus people, these people got up and assassinated him. No mask or none. They didn't care how many people saw them do it, right? They wanted to do this, have this displayed in front of all of these people, in front of the world, It took place 1 week after Malcolm X's home in Queens had been firebombed, so it was clear he was the target. Assassination remains largely unsolved, but we are now learning new details in the case. Wednesday night, at what is now the Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz Center in Washington Heights. Malcolm X's daughter, Elisa Shabazz, spoke of that horrifying date. Our father was gunned down as he prepared to speak right here at this location. Here in that location, Shabazz said, my pregnant mother placed her body over my 3 sisters and me to protect us from gunfire and to shield us from the terror before our eyes. All right, so just going to scroll down here. I believe I was detained in this conspiracy by the NYPD and FBI in order to ensure Malcolm X's planned assassination would be successful, he said. Right, and I remember it was about, I can't recall the brother's name though, but he was speaking about the blood brothers and how the blood brothers were supposed to have been protecting the African blood brothers were supposed to have been protecting Malcolm X, but some of the key members of that organization was incarcerated like 2 weeks prior to Malcolm X giving his speech at the Audubon Ballroom. So there was things happening that led up to it to make sure that led up to Malcolm's assassination, to make sure he didn't have the proper protection that would have been warranted at this particular time, in this particular climate, where he was receiving death threats, and there were people coming from all angles that wanted to take the life of Malcolm X. So yeah, just wanted to uplift this, man. This is, a story, especially like we're going into the 100-year anniversary of the birth of Malcolm X next year, and the 60th anniversary of his assassination. And so, I think it's important that we continue to not just uplift them, but also talk about the message, because I still believe, Malcolm X had the answer, to the problem. He wasn't the only person with the answer, but he definitely had the program that would have really not only galvanized the masses of African people, but put us on a trajectory to be able to liberate ourselves from these colonial conditions, particularly in the Americas where he was focused at. And then he had a plan to unite the Africans in the Americas with the continent of Africa. That was all in place, right? And so that was thwarted by his assassination. And, the government knew what it was doing by assassinating him. And then later, key leaders who tried to attempted to carry on Malcolm X's message. And so, that's something that we have to be always aware of. If we're talking about Malcolm X and we're talking about carrying out his program, we are a threat to imperialism, and we have to be very careful. We have to always be thinking security because, history could repeat itself. So, yeah, I don't know if y'all wanted to add anything. Add any thoughts?
I will. I'm back. So I'm just glad to be here. Peace, everyone. Good morning. Grand Rising. Happy New Day. All the things.
Indeed. Peace.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I guess I'll say 2 things. I'll try to make it short. In terms of, when the story that Frank gave, and thinking about, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and the point that Frank was making about if they do succeed, right, how they will be an example to the populations of those other West African countries that are still part of ECOWAS, to then say, okay, well, there's another way. And so, and thinking about revolution, and, a saying I heard once that, like, when people will revolt when they see that there's really another option. And so just thinking about that in terms of, like, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, creating a federation and going that way. And like Frank is saying, being that example of that you can do this without being beholden to neo-colonial powers. Like, you can move forward, even though you're in a terrible position. And like, and those ECOWAS, and many of those ECOWAS countries, the majority of the population is also in terrible positions, right? And so that, like, stepping aside and deciding, okay, well, within my terrible position, do I move on my own independently, um, and make my own decisions, or do I move beholden to this same structure that for decades has shown that no matter how long that you're connected with them, things will remain the same. Only a few, only a small population will things change for. And so you've already seen what being aligned with, the West has gotten you. And you've seen that it hasn't gotten you far. And so why not, go out onto your own and like silence those messages. And I think when they say like, oh, they're not going to make it on their own, that's to, like they do in a lot of areas, to put like that fear of like, oh, I'm not going to make it, so I might as well just stay where I am. And so I think that same tactic of using fear and instilling fear of failure within yourself is the same tactic that's being used in this instance. And I think in terms of the Malcolm X portion of it too, I'm thinking, just to your point, just to add on to your point, Kemba, in terms of like, one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we, uplift or look at those who are doing the work today? Because sometimes we may see like, oh, we may ask like, okay, there's all of these groups and all these leaders that we can look to in the past, right? But what are the groups and the leaders that we can look to today? And I think about, the December 12th movement and how they've, carried on and continue to carry on Malcolm X's legacy in terms of his politics and his plan, like you were saying. And just us thinking about what are those organizations that are really, putting forth a decolonial critique and action and movement toward decolonization in a way that is broad and international and self-determined, like the plan of Malcolm X was. And so I think like one of our charges is to say like, okay, who are those organizations, who are those groups today that we can look at and say, look, they're continuing to do the work, and let's uplift these. Because when we think about how people don't understand and don't even know what Malcolm X's plan really was, I think I learned a lot about Malcolm X even before I got into the particular type of work that I've been doing with political prisoners. But I learned even more when I was looking through the papers of the and like all of the documents that you can find on their website, the Republic of New Africa, like, and looking to see how what you were saying about Malcolm X, like when I, and that was like, maybe like a couple years ago, because I was looking and doing some research and wanting, and going into that and seeing, a lot of people don't even know, like, the way that he had organized things, his thought process behind that, the structure, and how like the Black Panthers and some of these other organizations like this, like all of these movements that came up were pushing, were carrying on, like Asada Shakur says, the work that he was putting forth, and saw the importance of it. To say that Black people, African people here within the United States are a independent nation that needs to be able to be seen by the world as that, as like, people don't think about him, saying that. They only, put forth the narrative that they put forth, that like, oh well, afterward, after he broke from the Nation of Islam, he was this multiracial, multicultural, okay, moved to, no, but like, they've stripped all of that away so that you don't really understand the process and the real plan, and how like the logic of it too, like, right, how much it makes sense, and how much like you can really move to enact that, and how like the Republic of New Africa and other organizations were moving to enact those things, right? And so then when you look at the Republic of New Africa and the United States, and them targeting the Black Panther Party and the BLA movement, like, you see why, right? How his assassination, and also the attack, like COINTELPRO's attack on Black liberation movements, was targeted because they understood that if Black people really understand this and actually make this move, how that could really be a game changer, that could really shift our position and how we see, not just how we see ourselves, but how the world sees us, and also how we're positioned to, in a certain way, to challenge the power, because we know power only answers to power. And so when you put yourself in a position of power to directly challenge the United States on your own power basis, that is, that's something that we know that the United States, and also European, those other European countries within the West, also don't want. So that was what I thought about that. One to add on.
What you were going to say something, Frank?
Yeah. There's a reading here. I want to connect that with Malcolm X. So then it said, remember, there is a mission by these European and US colonizers to reestablish, to reinstitute, to reestablish colonization. And then he said, throughout Africa, we are at war. The war of Malcolm X are as vibrant today as they were in 1965 Huru. We are at war. Now, the reason why I brought his comment, all right, and that relates to what we're going to be discussing tomorrow. And just what he said here, that is what exactly Anthony Blinken said recently. He said, uh, Africa shipped Europe and the US, and Africa is shifting Europe and the US, and Africa will shift the future of Europe and the US. So in his statement, he did not say, and how Africa will progress. And like Dennis said here in his statement, right, about what Malcolm X said. So when you look at the statement of Anthony Blinken, how Europe built America, how Europe, build how Africa built Europe and America, and how Africa going to, shape the future. So you begin to wonder as to the method that was used, the method that was used before Africa shaped the future of Europe and the US, and the method that have been used, and the method that they are going to use. So when you look at these things, and you know that Malcolm X, he was actually he have everything in him, unlike other leaders. Some of the leaders who came after us, uh, they did not have everything. Some of them had the gift of speaking. Some of them had the gift of organizing. Some of them have the gift of fighting. Well, Malcolm X has everything. He had the gift of speaking. He had a gift of organizing. He had the gift of fighting. That revolutionary mind, and that is why he did things the way he did, and he spoke the way he did, and that is why Europe or America or the American government call him extremist, because of his approach and his application to everything. And he said things as it was and as it is still happening. So the sort is that he spoke in the present and also the future. And that is why today his message still resonate to our current situation of things. So he reminded us that, look, listen, even though I may be gone, but if you see current issues that is happening and you listen to my voice, or you hacking to my voice, my writing, my videos, you will see that what affected you in the past is still affecting you in the past. And that's the kind of approach I want you to take, the approach that I took. And that is why, for me, I respect this man so much. He inspired me. In fact, he is the man that I really follow. He is my, my model or my idol, and so to speak, because he had everything in him, and that's how I want to be. I want to have everything in me, not some, but all.
Mm. I unite with that. Yeah, I agree with that, man. X is the answer. X is the answer. That's why I always appreciated the discussion around, Malcolm. It's, I'm still inspired, man. Like I'm hearing Malcolm for the first time. You know, anytime I listen to a speech or read any of his letters or statements, and you know, I think that's why I really embody what Malcolm had taught us. And to this day, like you know, everything, every move that I make, every decision, you know, like the bottom line is like, how is it going to move us towards our liberation? And I get this from Malcolm because it's like everything that Malcolm did, you know, he's basically sacrificed his life to make sure that Black people were free, right? And it's up to us to carry that on, you know, into every African. What other purpose of should we have? What other mission? What other objective should we have other than liberation? You know, and you know, a lot of our people, unfortunately, aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about how can I make a lot of money? You know, that's their salvation. How can I get this wealth, right? So I can be all right. Generational wealth, right? This is stuff that the colonizer has instilled in us. And it's funny. I'm transitioning to the book. This is last thought. Um, I really was thinking, man, just how we live our whole life. People are living their whole life just to acquire money. That's what life has become about, acquiring money. You know, for of course, like that's a means to do other things, get houses and whatever. But it's like our whole existence revolves around money. And that's sad. If that's, you know, if you like really think about it deeply, like that's a sad thing if that's what we're living for. You know, is this what this I envy the animals now, man. You know, like, but anyway, let me transition. This this May 19th in Philadelphia, and I'm sure wherever you are, there's probably something going on. Um, but here in Philadelphia, uh, there's going to be, where is this flyer hiding at? I'm going to get to it. And here we go. Let's go. So yeah, save the date, May 19th. Save the date. You'll see it on our page. And there will be, you know, new flyers as we get closer to the date. But save the date, Malcolm X Day. Claim Malcolm X Day on May 19th in Philadelphia. So if any vendors that are interested in getting involved, any artists, anybody who wants to be involved in any way, definitely reach out. We're going to make this year's Malcolm X Day event the biggest one yet. But I think this is about the 10th or 11th year the claim that Malcolm X Day has been going on in Philadelphia. So that's this May 19th. And let's get into the reading. Is this message still relevant? This is a message to the grassroots, which was given in Detroit. All my people, make sure you like and share it too. Like and share. Don't be stingy with the information. You know, we like to spread the knowledge. Let's see, Malcolm X. Boom. So this is 1963. Malcolm at this time was still a member of the Nation of Islam, but you can see in this particular speech that he's sort of, you kind of begin to see Malcolm shift from the Nation of Islam message, right? I don't even think he mentions the honorable, you know, Elijah Muhammad when he begins this speech, right? He's still speaking from the position of a Muslim, and the message that he's given is very political. So it not that the others weren't, but there's not a religious undertone really in the whole message. You kind of see the Malcolm that we came to know after he separated from the Nation of Islam. That begins to, I think you see that developing right here in this message to the grassroots speech. So, you know, I'm not going to get into the whole tensions that already were existing in the nation between Malcolm and some of the leadership. But I think you kind of begin to see Malcolm make that transition to who he's going to become in 1964. So this is given in 63. Just some context. The Detroit Council for Human Rights announced a Northern Negro Leadership Conference to be held in Detroit on November 9th and 10th. When the council's chairman, Reverend C.L. Franklin, sought to exclude Black nationalists and Freedom Now advocates from the conference, right, Reverend Albert B. Cleed Jr. resigned from the council and, in collaboration with the Group on Advanced Leadership, arranged for a Northern Negro Grassroots Leadership Conference, right? So I'm not going to read all of this, but the reason I wanted to read that was just to give some context, because in the speech, and if you listen to the speech, you hear Malcolm talk about how some other Black folks in the city didn't want to have certain people involved in this conference because of they didn't want to have this discussion on Black nationalism. And he said, if you're scared of Black nationalism, what did he say, Natasha? You're scared of Black nationalism, you're scared of revolution. That's what he said. And if you love revolution, you love Black nationalism, right? So it kind of, just makes some sense of like who he's talking to specifically when he makes that comment. So you end up having these two conferences going on at the same time, unfortunately, but that's what happened. So I'll begin here. Oh, did I share the link? I didn't share the link, did I? I'm going to share the link to the reading in the chat. Is this the link to the reading? If that's not the link to the reading, you can let me know. But I think that's Malcolm X's message, selected speeches, and statements right there. But if it's not, let me know. But I think I shared the right one. So, yeah, message to the grassroots. We want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me, us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand. We all agree tonight, all of the speakers have agreed that America has a very serious problem. Not only does America have a very serious problem, but our people have a very serious problem. America's problem is us. We're her problem. The only reason she has a problem is she doesn't want us here. And every time you look at yourself, be you Black, brown, red, or yellow, a so-called Negro, you represent a person who poses such a serious problem for America because you're not wanted. Once you face that as a fact, then you can start plotting a course that will make you appear intelligent instead of unintelligent. What you and I need to do is learn to forget our differences. When we come together, we don't come together as Baptists or Methodists. You don't catch hell because you're a Baptist, and you don't catch hell because you're a Methodist. You don't catch hell because you're a Methodist or Baptist. You don't catch hell because you're a Democrat or a Republican. You don't catch hell because you're a Mason or an Elk. And you sure don't catch hell because you're an American. Because if you were an American, you wouldn't catch hell. You catch hell because you're a Black man. You catch hell, all of us catch hell for the same reason. So we're all Black people, so-called Negroes, second-class citizens, ex-slaves. You're nothing but an ex-slave. You don't like to be told that, but what else are you? You are ex-slaves. You didn't come here on the Mayflower. You came here on a slave ship in chains like a horse or a cow or a chicken. And you were brought here by the people who came here on the Mayflower. You were brought here by the so-called pilgrims or founding fathers. They were the ones who brought you here. We have a common enemy. We have this in common. We have a common oppressor, a common exploiter, and a common discriminator. But once we all realize that we have a common enemy, then we unite on the basis of what we have in common. And what we have foremost in common is that enemy, the white man. He's an enemy to all of us. I know some of you all think that some of them are enemies. Time will tell. Did anybody want to build on that?
Yeah, let me come in.
Because I get lost in the words, man.
It's too much, like every word is like everything he's describing in there is factual and it's reality, and that's what we are seeing. That is what we are experiencing. There are some books that you can read and then you read 2, 3 sentences before you get to a point. But for him, every point that he make, everything that he pen is all reality. And that is why, he's not a lukewarm. And that is why he said, I don't put milk in my coffee. I drink my coffee just like that. And, because I want to have a taste of the coffee. I don't want sugar. I don't want milk. That's the kind of person Malcolm X, was. And what we discussed yesterday, right, in terms of nation building, this is what exactly Malcolm X was saying here yesterday, and as we discussed yesterday. When we talk about nation building, for example, in a colonial nation or an imperialist nation like the United States, we are not talking about forming a nation where we will have a government. Of course, they will never allow you have a government within their system. So, and that is what Malcolm X was talking about here, about identifying the enemies, because the enemy is real. The enemy is making it real to us that, look, we are your enemy. And Malcolm X, he's not the kind of person that will come to you with metaphor, speaking metaphor. He don't speak in metaphor. He speak as it is. Okay, he identify things as it is, and that is why he keep reminding us. No matter what you do, I mean, you can be a millionaire as a black man. You still a nigger. Okay, you can sit on the table and drink tea and bread with Biden, you still a nigger. And the reality here is Obama is still a nigger. No matter what he do, he's still a nigger. He can sit on the table. He can go to the biggest platform, where George Bush can go, where Clinton can go, where Biden can go. But the end game at the end of the day, he's still a nigger. And the reason why he's still a nigger, right now, Job which can leave, okay, and he can decide, what, I don't want to agree with the philosopher of America. He will not be called any other name. Biden can agree that, okay, what, I don't want to agree to this philosopher. I have different idea. He will still be Biden, okay. But if Obama just say, what, I don't agree with Washington D.C. I don't agree with the hierarchy, okay. He will be called a nigger, and he will be brought down. He will be relegated to the least. He will be called nigger. He will be called African American. He will be called all the names. He will even be called thugs. Okay, so that's how it is, and that's what Malcolm X was talking about. No matter how it is, you are in society as a black man, you are still a nigger. You are still a negro. They still view you like that. So you don't have to be part of that entity. What we need to do here is, as a black man, we need to recognize the common enemy and come together and build ourselves. Okay, and when we build ourselves, we have a common ground, common understanding, common institution, common heritage. Okay, it will be hard for anybody to just come and infiltrate us, and it will be hard, okay, for anybody to just come and change our game, or change our mind. For example, we don't have it, right? And that is why, because we don't have it, every year we struggle to vote. Who do we want to vote for? Do we want to vote for Democrat? Do we want to vote for Republican? Or who is going to serve our interests? Because we do not listen to someone like Malcolm X to understand, the reality.
Nah, most definitely. Like and with the American statement that he made, like, you're not American. It's just two things. Like, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about, as far as, like, it's still a nigga to the European. And if you look at historically, and it's still today, but throughout history, those who were most accepted by the power structure, by the European, were those who act closer to the European, like those who spoke like the European, dressed like the European, right? That was a civilized black person right there. The Christian black man or woman, who spoke a particular way. So in order to gain acceptance, some similar, of acceptance, you had to be more American like. And so black people who weren't assimilating, as smoothly as some of the other black people, were looked at as uncivilized and still backwards. And so when you think about that throughout history, if this is what we had to do to gain acceptance, it becomes a part of our value system, unfortunately. It becomes something that we strive for. How can I speak, better? How can I behave better? How can I assimilate into this American mainstream? And we lose ourselves in the process. And so the mindset that we need to develop in order to liberate ourselves is not being developed, because we're developing a mindset of how do I assimilate into this culture so I can climb up the social ladder, and be successful, live that American dream. So, that's unfortunately so unfortunate. And this is where we are at as far as combating that and saying, yo, that's not the path to salvation. Like there's another option that you have as black people when it comes to this fight to liberate and advance ourselves. Natasha, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in terms of just thinking about when he talks about in the beginning, that, where was that? I just highlighted it. Oh right. So we have a problem. Like, America has a we all agree that, he says that America has a very serious problem. And so it made me think about that part. It made me think about like the Beyonce song, The Renaissance. I think one of the songs that she has on the album, and I haven't listened to the album. I haven't listened to any songs fully. I just know, like, how online there's clips of songs and stuff. And so the America Has a Problem clip, was one that was a popular one that you would hear a lot from this song. And I think that a lot of the times, like, we hear these sound bites of things that come from, black revolutionaries, or, black people who, challenging the status quo, but it's cut so much that that people don't go beyond it. And I'm thinking about, like, when people talk about the responsibility of an artist and what does art do, right? And so thinking about that term, America has a problem. And I think, like, a lot of people don't go further in. If people will be like, yeah, because you hear people, like, if they hear that song, they're like, yeah, America has a problem. But the question is, okay, what is the problem? And a lot of people will say that America has a problem, but they won't really know what the real problem is, right? There's the problem that America really has, which Malcolm X is pointing out, right? Where he says that, like, America has a problem, and America's problem is black people, African people, that is their problem, right? That they want to get rid of. When you have a problem, you want to get rid of it. And so I think that there's the problem, as Malcolm X so pointedly, lays out, versus the problem that they're telling you that you should be looking at. And I think that's one of the things, building off of what he says, is like being clear on what the problem is, right? Being clear that you are the problem. It's not like some other problem that exists out there. Like, it's not because, it's just capitalism. It's not that it's just a class issue. It's not just that it's just, racism. So we just got to fix racism and that's the problem. No, the problem is that you were never brought here to be an American. Like, you were written into, humanity, right? Because no people has to be written into humanity. If you have to be written into humanity, that's a big, serious problem. And it never, no matter what year it is in America, that it doesn't erase the fact that within American society, you have to be written into humanity. When you are a human yourself, like, you are already born human with your power, with your rights, And you can either decide that someone else has to write you into humanity and tell you, okay, we're going to give you this part of your humanity back, but we're still going to deny these other parts. Because when somebody writes you into humanity, they control who you can be, how much you can be. And that's the issue that we're still having, because we were never brought into the US to be Americans or to be part of it. And so the way that you exercise your humanity and your power is not by getting people to write you more into humanity, but to assert your own self-determination, as Malcolm X puts forth, and enact your humanity. Enacting your humanity is saying we are a nation. We can decide for ourselves. We're self-determined. We don't need you to tell us what we can do or what we can't do. You don't need to tell us like, oh, you can only be American if you decide, right? You decide, like, you could decide, okay, well, I don't want to be part of this. Like you were saying, us losing ourselves for a long time, our grandparents, great grandparents, our ancestors really fought against, and when you hear really fought against assimilating into the European culture that exists within America, that it leads American society. And so that was us saying, like, we know what it means to be human, and we have our own concept of humanity. And what the stuff that you're doing and what you've been doing, that is not human. That is not humanity. And we don't want to be assimilated. We don't want to take on those values and those ways of being and those ways of seeing. But through the process of brainwashing and telling us, oh, well, we need to be American. You need to see yourself as American. Although, as Malcolm X is pointing out, they will never make you can never be an American, because they're even telling you can never be a human within their society. That's why they be shooting you down on the streets. That's why they shoot us down on the streets. That's why they have tons of us in prisons. That's why they continue to do the things that they do, because as much as they're not saying it to you, they're showing it to you. We wrote you into humanity. We're telling you how much human you can be, if you can be human. And the more we keep buying into the fact that, oh, we just need to, help them write us more into humanity, is the issue, right? Instead of recognizing, like Malcolm is saying, like, you're not an American, because if you're an American, why are you not getting all the rights of a human being American, right? And why he asserted, like, we have to go beyond seeing ourselves as American, or seeing ourselves as here as like people who are that should align themselves with America, and see ourselves as human beings. What does that mean? That means something completely different, and that makes you position yourself and take power in a different way, right? So just pointing that part out about America's problem, because I think, like, we're told what America's problem is, even though deep and down inside we kind of know, but they're telling you, no, that's what Malcolm is saying about Black people being the problem is your existence being the problem is not the answer. Is not really what the problem is. Your problem is that there's racism, and you just have to fix the racism that exists, right? So and or like the classism that exists, that once you fix that, all your problems will go away. So yeah, so that was like the main thing that I was thinking about. I had some other thoughts, but I'm gonna end it there.
No, that's a really profound thought. Like the written into humanity. Yeah, we should write an article on that. What's up? It's the
Yeah,
tag team. This tag team. I can get it started. I think that'd be a good article and podcast, just to have that discussion, because it really excited me, man. It gave me a second win in this fight, that we are a part of, because our people are still fighting to be written into humanity, and that's crazy. It's like when you have to have laws put on the books, and why not just build a nation of your own? Like, and not have to worry about that, be governed by your own laws. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, exactly. Like you just said, right? Black people are fighting to get into humanity. Like, one of the words that usually baffle me, that I never like, right? First African American, or first African to do this, first African American, first Black man to do this.
Yeah.
How can it be the first black man when the black man was the beginning of the war?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when the black man was the beginning of the creation, when
And
the black man was the beginning of invention,
mm-hmm.
then how can you say first black man to do this, first African American to do this, first African to do this, and they gave all
Mm-hmm.
these descriptions, what all these adjectives, and then we Africans, the ignorant one, we sit and take it and we rejoice that,
We
oh
get
yes,
excited.
yes,
We get
yeah,
excited about that. You
yeah.
know, first black president, like you know, first black president of Harvard, first black. It's like, oh, we made it. We doing it. Like one person. Like
Mm.
what? You know what I'm saying? Like that symbolism, and it's like, man, if you tell me, you know, oh, things are equal now, is even now, you know, like we're doing it at the same clip or whatever, but it shows that, you know, we're just playing catch up in this society, you know, with everything. And if
And I would
anything,
say, oh no, I was going to add to it. I would say not even catch up.
I was going, yeah, not even catch up. Go ahead. What was you going to
Like
say?
it's a movement into whiteness,
Yeah.
right? Because you're the first black president of Harvard. Harvard is, you know, we know a white supremacist institution that was created
Mm-hmm.
before the American Revolution. Well, just like, you know, many of these universities are white supremacist organizations, whether they admit it or not. But
Mm-hmm.
um, that you have to be the first of this, meaning like, oh, okay, you can do what a white person does now. Like, you know, white
Yeah,
people,
exactly. That's what I was going to say.
when you
Yeah.
try to be the black version of a white character,
That's what
like
we striving for. Yeah, it's it. Like I said, I think like we can definitely I think we should do something on this, man. I'm gonna get it started, you know. But nah, I appreciate it. That's a good way to end the segment too. I hope that is a thought that we can take away from us. And this is a conversation that we need to extend to people in our community, our family. This whole thing about just being written into humanity, and you know, are we ever going to reach? Can we ever reach the point where we become humane? You know, if this because then it's the resistance to the writing us into humanity. You know, some people claim that is racism in reverse, you know. And so you know, it's a whole lot I think that can be discussed. But appreciate everybody for tapping in, being a part of this discussion. We're going to continue on with Malcolm X next week. I think we'll stick with the message to the grassroots, go deeper and dive into this particular speech. So until next time, and y'all had any last thoughts?
I mean, my last thoughts will be see you guys tomorrow. We're going to be looking at the statement of U.S. how they call it Secretary General of how I don't know Anthony Blinken or so. He made a statement, and, you know, and we discussed part of this last week about Eric Prince, you know, when he said the United States or Europe, you know, they should recolonize Africa, the whole of Africa and African nations. And the Israeli Prime Minister also said the same thing, that after they destroy or after they take the land of the Palestinian, the next place they are coming to colonize or recolonize to take is the African continent. And Anthony Blinken just confirmed it again as well. And he said, you know, Africa changed Europe and America, and Africa, you know, is going to change Europe and America. Okay, so they just confirmed it that he just confirmed it that they are coming to recolonize African people. And the reality here is, look, folks, this may seem something that these guys are just saying, or they are just this, right? Now look at this. Right now, they are in Gaza and Pakistan. They are killing these people, right? They are fighting these people. Who is holding them accountable? All right. Now, South Africa took them to the UN or to the RCC, right? And the UN is there, right? So who is actually holding these people accountable? And they are there pointing fingers. Oh, you did this. Oh, you did this. Or you cannot do this. Or you cannot do this. And no one can bring them to justice. And at the end of the day, the United Nations cannot do anything. And they are still continue bombing these people. Nobody holding accountable. So the reality here is that will be the same thing they will do on the African continent. They will kill Africans. They will destroy Africa, right, to take the place, and no one will take them. No one will charge them. No one will hold them guilty. And at the end of the day, they will still have a war meeting, and they will blame the United States. They will blame Europe. And, you doing this, you killing African, you committing genocide, you committing all these kind of atrocities, right? No one will hold them accountable, and that will just be it. And no one will speak for African. Just like no one's speaking for, anyway, people are speaking for the Palestinian. But the issue here is, at the end of the day, America will not be here accountable. All right. So that's how we African, as we continue, okay, to look at these things as they are unfolding. We need to realize that, you know what, we need to disengage with the United States. They are colonizer, they are imperialists. Okay, they will never change with their attitude, and every statement that they are making, it should get into our head that these people, they are the enemies.
I say.
And I would just add on to that. My last quick comment is that I think one of the things that, like what Frank says, is the key word of like the national, like what are the national interests? I think this goes back to like all of the things that we talked about, like American national interest doesn't necessarily mean Black people's interest. Like when America talks about its national interest, that is not connected to Black people's interest, because to the killing of Patrice Lumumba, that is connected to America's national interest, right? The killing of indigenous leaders within Latin America, or the destabilization of Haiti, that is in America's national interest. Is that in the interest of Black people? All these examples, no. And so I think that is something that, people need to think about when America is talking about its national interest. What is its national interest? You have to be clear on what that is, because when you understand that most times is the antithesis of our interests.
Say, I agree. Before we jump off too, wanted to, if you're in New York, or in the New York area, next Saturday, we have a program going on. AIU Abundance and Ujama and DTR 360 books. If you don't know about DTR 360 books, make sure you check out their website. That's where you should be getting your books from. It's an online bookstore, but in collaboration, we're going to be hosting a program. Is Revolution is the only solution. We're going to have Baba Charles Barron, who's going to be speaking, or Shamori Baruti, I should say. Shamori Baruti is going to be speaking, aka Charles Barron, at the event, the program next week. We're going to be showing the East. What's the name of the documentary?
The East.
No, something rise in the East.
Oh, the sun rises in the East.
Rise in the East, yeah. Powerful documentary about a movement in Brooklyn, control schools, Africanize, control institutions, Africanize these institutions. And this group started the International African Arts Festival as well. But it's a powerful doc. We'll be showing that and having a serious discussion. There'll be some other organizations in the house as well. And discussions on how we can move forward to, develop programs. And and a brother, or I don't know if it's brother or sister, Dada or Ndugu, balance your dialogue with practical community development projects. Most definitely, man, got to find that balance. But we do have those discussions. I think we have a lot of those discussions offline. But I think finding a way to incorporate those online as well. But it's always an encouragement for people to get involved, though, in organization, and build, institutions and programs. But that's something I think that we do have to do, balance and uplift whatever's going on in our community, whatever we're doing here, at WCC, as well as uplifting other groups and individuals that have practical solutions, right, to solve this problem. So appreciate that. And again, appreciate everybody for tapping in. So until next time, continue to build, continue to have revolution on your mind, Black liberation. Peace. Uhuru.